Hello, hello, here we go, it's the Copyright Podcast.
What is happening, everyone, and welcome back to the Copyright Podcast. On today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by former Liverpool striker Neil Mellor. Neil, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks for having me on.
No, it's boss to have you. It's it's nice to do these type of shows where we get an insight into the years gone by and reminisce and stuff and talk about Liverpool. And yeah, nice one for jumping on. Really appreciate that.
Mick, let me just get it out of the way to start with, because people will be looking at my background thinking, what's that? So that's the 2004-2005 shirt. And then the picture next to it, better point that way, was my academy debut. And for my 18th birthday, my family had it painted for me. So that was a nice moment.
Oh, class. Yeah, that looks really good, actually, that, to be fair. Is that like your little study setup, is it, you've got that going on there?
You can't see the wind in Kirby on that painting, but that was my debut. Sheffield Wednesday it was on the front pitch of the academy.
Yeah, oh, boss. Yeah. I mean, that shirt's like iconic. I think I've got that somewhere. I think I've got Alonso on the back because I just thought that was the
what. But you know, the thing with the shirts back then was they used to just say what size you want, and I was like, XL. So all the shirts are like baggy. You're thinking, why did you get an XL? Should have gone medium or large.
Yeah. Now it's gone like the other way, and everyone's got like tight shirts. I'm sure it'll come back full circle again, won't it? And the baggy will be back in at some point. But yeah, Neil, like I said, really appreciate you taking the time to jump on. And I just thought I know you've probably been asked all the standard questions loads. We're gonna get into them because I've got to ask you, obviously, because you're the first time you're on the Copyright Podcast. So, but I just wanted to start at the beginning, really, and obviously, your dad Ian was a player for Man City, and then obviously you were a big City fan growing up and ended up playing for them as well. From when you were like 10 to 16, and obviously then they decided to let you go when you were 16, even though you were banging in the most goals in the youth setup and all that. But how do you look back on that period in your life?
Yeah, well, I have to say my dad was massive for me during my career because he had been a professional. He started at Man City, went to Norwich, Brighton, Sheffield Wednesday, and he had a decent career for himself. Obviously didn't make the money that the players make these days, but it was something I always wanted to do and follow in his footsteps to be a player like him. And he played for City when City were good, sort of back in sort of the early 70s. Then they went rubbish for like 30 odd years, and then obviously the money came in and it changed the football club completely. So yeah, growing up, City was the team that I followed, and for a lot of fans, they will think, how can anyone ever change club team that you fancy that you follow? But it happens to many players. So you know, not just me, but many ex-Liverpool players have taken the football club to heart, and that's what happened to me. So at 16, yeah, I was at City scoring goals every year, top goal scorer, and it came as a surprise, I have to say, when they did let me go. So I was thinking, okay, maybe my football dream was over. Played for England schoolboys, scored 5 goals in a game. And then pretty much every team in the country was saying, right, okay, we want to sign you, including City. And I was like, you've just bid me off. There's no way I'm coming back to you. So Liverpool gave me that opportunity, and the rest is history. So today, what am I now? Nearly 40. I can't believe how old I am. Left City at 16, and they sort of ended my football dream. But it was Liverpool who gave me my football dream. So to experience everything about the football club, Liverpool is now my team. My dad is still Man City. So a few years ago, Liverpool played City in the cup final, and City won on penalties. And I was watching the game. I had one sofa with my little lad, and my dad had the other sofa. So we had the away end, and my little boy wouldn't speak to his granddad for an hour afterwards because City had beat us on penalties. But yeah, so Liverpool is now my team. But growing up, it was City till that moment at 16.
Yeah, but like you said, there's like players like Carragher, like probably the highest profile one. He was a massive blue, went to all the games, and obviously then signed for Liverpool, and then it changes because of course, you're not gonna. You can't keep that affinity when you've pulled on a share for another club and you stay there for a while, and you like you said, you get embedded in the city and you get used to the values and stuff like that.
I moved to Liverpool, so that was a big thing for me because my dad said, listen, you need to go and understand what the football club's about, what the people are about. So I moved into Anfield Road, and it's quite sad going to the games now because I can see the redevelopment and it looks amazing. That was my home for 3 years, and so that really helped me connect with what the city was about and what the people were about. and that helped me think, wow, I want to be a part of this.
Yeah, and then just obviously just going back a little bit to obviously when City released you, how did it come to be that? Was I obviously imagine Stevie Highway was influential and all that, but what was it that Liverpool came first after that and they wanted to give you the platform, or was it?
So how it worked was, I was under 16 at Man City and they didn't have a team. So I was on the bench for under 17s and I wasn't getting much game time. So my dad said, right, we'll ask for your release. So it wasn't City going, we want to get rid of you. So we sort of tested the water, went, right, well, release him then. And they did. So it was like, okay, fair enough. They've released me. And I was upset. Of course I was upset. And I was just carrying on with my school. And like I say, playing for the England schoolboys was when I got noticed by scoring 5 goals in a game, and that was when the chance of a trial at Liverpool. So my debut trial for Liverpool was 16. I come off the bench for Rick Parry's lad, Jamie. He was a centre forward at the time, and 1-1 Man United at the old Cliff. That's where it was, yeah. So 1-1. Come off the bench, scored the winner. Decent goal, gone round the goal. He scored the winner against United, so I'm buzzing with that. Hat-trick next game against Newcastle, couple against Leeds the next game. So all of a sudden, I'm on absolute fire on trial. So that was when Stevie called me into his office, Stevie Highway, and I'm thinking, right, okay, this is when I find out if I'm going to get a contract or not. And I'll always remember what he said. So he wants me to sign, but he goes, we think you're raw. So I'm thinking, surely you've got to tell me how good I am. But he didn't. He said, no, we think you're raw. We can work with you. We can make you better. And we'd love you to sign. So it was, that was when I found out from Stevie Highway. 65 quid a week it was my first contract. There you go. Big bucks back then.
Ah, boss. Yeah, that sounds, I mean, so do you think that was kind of like a way they don't want to like big like kids up basically, and get them too ahead of the station before they get like to the higher levels?
And another thing that Stevie Highway said to me was, you will leave this football club. So I'm preparing you to leave this football club. If you're here for a year, then all right. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, however long you've been here, you will leave this football club. And I'm sat there thinking, I'm not just signed, but he's getting in your head. Listen, enjoy and make the most of the time that you're here. And then he also said, listen, connect to the football club, because you've got to really support this football club if you want to be here. So all those things combined was brilliant advice. I mean, Stevie Highway was an amazing coach, great player, of course. The fans still sing his name, but that advice definitely resonated with me.
Yeah, and like you said, like the stuff that the amount of goals that you were scoring, like I've just got a few stats that you had to correct me on earlier. Wikipedia isn't quite the
I don't believe them stats on Wikipedia.
Yeah, Wikipedia isn't quite the fountain knowledge that people believe it is, but obviously in the youth cup semi-final during the 2000-2001 season, I mean, I imagine. So did you scored 9 in 4 games? That was just in the run to into the semi-final, was it? Is that up until that point?
Yes. So scored in every round, including a hat-trick at Anfield, which I think it was Charlton scored a hat-trick against. So it was a good run. There's only one player that scored more than me in the youth cup. That was Michael Owen. So 9. I think a few years back, did Glatzel get 8? He got close to it. So yeah, it was a good return, and that was when I first got the chance to play at Anfield, albeit only 2,000 or 3,000 there. But it was an unbelievable experience just to be there and playing, and obviously scoring a few goals.
Yeah, not a bad player to be picked by, Michael Owen. To be fair, I know Liverpool fans, some Liverpool fans aren't his biggest friend after the whole Man United thing and whatever else. But yeah, on his day in his peak Liverpool time, Michael Owen was absolutely amazing, wasn't he? So, and obviously then you went on you were top goal scorer in the under-19s reserves during the 2001-2002 season, scoring 46 goals, and then on Wikipedia it said 56 including friendlies. So I imagine you go with 56.
I include friendlies, of course I do.
Yeah.
And I'm out there on the pitch. Yeah, do you know what? I used to love the reses, because back then I was playing with some of the first team players that weren't playing at the weekends. Jamie Redknapp, Gary McAllister, Marcus Babbel. It was like been around some senior players that I absolutely buzzed off, and the opposition would. I remember scoring past Paul Robinson, who was the England goalie at the time, who was playing a game for Leeds in a comeback game, and I scored, and it gave me a massive boost to be playing and scoring in some of those games. So that was a good season. That was a really good season for me. I was down at the academy. It was separate then, academy in Mellor. So I hadn't stepped up to being around the first team. The only time was those reserve games where I got to see the first team players.
Yeah, and that's something that obviously that provides you with like a massive like platform, because it gives you confidence, and then you obviously wanting to break into the first team, and then the year after, obviously, you play 6 games and you get 1 goal, and you like your first proper season, if you like, in 2002, 2003. We go on to win the League Cup and losing the FA Cup, unfortunately, to Arsenal that season. But how was that transition for you? Like you said, you scored in like fucking hundreds in the resis, and you're doing really well. How did your mentality, did it have to switch slightly, or were you just still focused on just banging in as many as you could?
Yeah, well, my dad always said, just don't be scared of any reputations. Go and show them what you're all about. So I was like, fine, down at Melwood now, let's do what I do and score goals. And I won the respect and the trust of the senior players by doing that. I wasn't overawed. I was like, oh my God, I'm with Steven Gerrard and Jamie Carragher and Yari Lippman. And it was a case of, no, I've earned the right to be here. Now I'm going to show you why I'm down here. And I fitted in absolutely fine. Carried on scoring goals. Used to celebrate goals in training. And Sammy Lee and Phil Thompson were like, enjoyed it because I enjoyed scoring against Sander Westerveld and Jersey Dudek and the likes. It was I enjoyed all that.
Yeah, we've actually had Sander on the podcast a couple of years ago. That was a fun one. But yeah, like you said, like if you're coming into like as a youngster, you're breaking through. You of course you're gonna be like in a proper buzz moment where you're like, right, I'm amongst players that you've watched and you've seen how good they are, but now you're amongst them. So I suppose you have to like just make sure that you're not thinking, oh, these players are above my level, but these are players that I need to be like embedded with and getting used to on a daily basis and stuff.
Yeah, and also the players would work out if I wasn't up to it or good enough very quickly. So I settled in because I could handle it, and the training sessions I could contribute, and Stevie could wrap a ball into me knowing that I could control it, and when we did shooting, I could outscore some of the other strikers, and so I was a part of it, and that was why I was involved with a few of the match days. I mean, you mentioned there the stats. My first season, the goal I scored was semi-final goal against Sheffield United. That was the year we won it, 2003 against United, beating United. No better team to win a final, is there? But I'll always remember it was at Cardiff, and there was 17 of us that went down. And Gerard Houllier said to me the day before, he said, if anyone gets ill, you're on the bench. And I'm like, oh my God, devastated. Because I thought I was going to be on the bench. Because back then there was only 5 subs. I was like, oh, flipping out. Who's going to tell him the real on the day of a cup final against Man United? So I was part of the 17-man squad on the bench in the dressing room, but officially I wasn't on the bench. Got a medal because obviously I played my part in the competition and was part of the match day squad. But yeah, never got to get on the pitch. By the way, that was a great party. We stayed down in Cardiff that year, and we celebrated with the cup on the dance floor.
Love that, absolutely love that. But yeah, like so, that was like an amazing year. Obviously, getting trophies, and obviously, it's like I suppose now when you look at the teams we've got now under Klopp and stuff, like it's more acceptable that Liverpool are winning trophies. But I suppose back then, we had a good team, but it was more like there was more quality in around the league and around the cups, that if we won something, it was more, I don't know, it was more revered, I suppose, and more celebrated, because Liverpool weren't as good as maybe we wanted to be. So I suppose you can celebrate it more, I suppose, if you look at it like that. But then in the March of the 2003. Obviously, you mentioned Gerard Houllier, and I'll ask you about him in a second. But he gave you like a 3-year extension from 2003, obviously till 2006. How did that feel? Because obviously that was that must have felt like a confirmation that you were like embedded in the squad. You knew that you had quality, and that must have been like a real boost for you.
Yeah, I scored the goal in the semi-final. Played the next Premier League game against Aston Villa. Wasn't great, did okay. And then on the Monday morning, I remember him saying to me, you've earned the right for a new contract. So I was absolutely buzzing. I'd gone from obviously the youth money to being offered professional, proper first team, not top wages, but better wages than I'd been on. And I always remember saying to him, "Okay, great." He said, "I want you to use my agent." And back then, my dad used to work for the PFA, so the PFA to me was an organisation that looked after the players. So I said, "No, I'm getting looked after by the PFA, Gordon Taylor." And he went, "Okay, fair enough." And I only got on for 6 more minutes in his entire duration as manager after saying that I was not going to be using his agent. Whether that had any relevance, I don't know. But it was a big surprise that was the case.
Oh my God. Wow. But yeah, like I mentioned before, like I just wanted to like touch on Gerard Houllier just a little bit before we move on to like obviously the iconic shirt that's hung up behind you and that season and stuff. But obviously he sadly passed away in December of 2020, and I just wanted to ask you, like, what was your relationship like with him at that time?
Liked him, yeah. I thought he gave me my debut for Liverpool, so I'll always be eternally grateful for that. He was the start of when the continental players started to come over to the Premier League. So he changed a lot of things down at the training ground. I remember one of the first times I was down there, they'd be like bottles of Coke, Sprite, chocolate bars. I was like, happy days, fill me boots after training. But he quickly got rid of all that. So all of a sudden the diet side of things changed. And it'd only come down on the training pitch, usually just on a Friday. And things were a little bit sharper just before the match day. He was, I mean, he was a top coach, wasn't he? And he brought success to Liverpool. And for giving me my debut, I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah, definitely. And what a guy. Rest in peace, Gerard Houllier. What a manager. What a guy. And he's someone that goes down as a Liverpool legend and always will be. But I just wanted to move on a little bit to obviously the next season you go. And this is a Liverpool podcast, but just like when I was like putting the questions together for this, I just thought like the loan to West Ham and obviously to Glen Road as West Ham in 2003, 2004, obviously back in the first division as it was called then, obviously the Championship now. You got 21 appearances for them and scored in 2 goals. But I just wanted to ask you, like, what?
That's a terrible return.
No, I mean, yeah, but like, it's one of those, isn't it? Like, I suppose at the time, like you're talking, like when I was looking through like the names there, I couldn't believe, like, obviously they'd just been relegated the first time that they had been for a while anyway. Obviously since the Premier League, so it'd been quite a big chunk there of time. So they had like Michael Carrick and Hutchinson, Rob Lee, Jermaine Defoe, Marlon Harewood. So they had good players, didn't they? So I suppose it was more of a you maybe trying to break into that team, because that's a Premier League team, I think. Obviously they've just been relegated, so they still had a lot of quality there. They'd lost Joe Cole, they'd lost Canute,
Glenn Johnson,
yeah.
Canute left in that summer. David James was still there. Thomas Repka, Christian Daly, Ian Pearce, Stevie Lomas, Rob Lee was there. Matty Etherington was there. It was Mickey Carrick was there. Jermaine Defoe. It was decent players. It was a decent players. Yeah, it was. Do you know what? I was gutted to leave Liverpool at the time, because I remember I was flying in pre-season and scored 2 goals for Liverpool away at Aberdeen. And I was thinking, right, I'm part of things again. I wasn't expecting to start, but I was thinking I'm going to be part of the squad and get game time. And Houllier came up to me after the game. I've scored 2 goals. We beat Aberdeen 5-1. That was when Harry Kewell scored his first Liverpool goal. And he said, "Do you want to go to West Ham or Sunderland? Have a little think about it, because I'd like you to go on loan and improve as a player." I was a bit gutted because I didn't want to leave, and so I had to make that decision. I remember ringing Mick McCarthy, who was the Sunderland manager, and telling him that I didn't want to sign for him. That was awkward. You know, nowadays players obviously just get their agents to do it, but my dad said, no, you've got to ring Mick McCarthy and tell him you don't want to sign him. I think that was about 11 seconds, the phone call, and then obviously West Ham. I signed for West Ham. What player would sign for a football club and they picked them up at the service station? I got picked up at Knutsford Services because the first game was Preston away, and we were going to train at Blackburn. So they picked me up at the services. I'm sat next to Jermaine Defoe. We go to train. I've literally just said hello to everyone, and Glenn Roden names me in the starting lineup for the first game of the season. I'm like, just not a good way to get started with the team at all. So he went after 2 or 3 games. So Trevor Brooking came in, loved it under him, and then Alan Pardew came in and didn't really get on, didn't see eye to eye, and I came back to Liverpool to end my loan spell there.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask you, like, what was that dressing room like then? Because, like I said, there's loads of top players there. Was that I wasn't gonna say difficult, but was that like quite a big change from what you were used to?
Yeah, in terms of quality, because I've gone from Liverpool to West Ham, and West Ham has just been relegated. But like I say, I could handle myself around the Liverpool players. So I wasn't worried about handling myself around the West Ham players. There was extra pressure because everyone was like, "Who's this young kid from Liverpool? You should be scoring 20 goals." And I wasn't. I wasn't doing the business on the pitch. And then obviously that affected my game time. What I would say is, though, what a group of lads in the dressing room. We'd go out once, twice a month, all days. Back then, you could get on it. It was fine because there was no social media and you could get away with it. And so the dressing room was really good in terms of that togetherness and the old sort of British spirit of going out and cracking on.
Yeah, and I actually watched I watched it before, but I rewatched your interview with Redmen TV. Shout out Redmen TV. That was obviously like about probably 4 years ago now, and you mentioned at the end of that when you ever had a drink, you got like tonsillitis after the day after. Was that every time?
If I drank 2 days in a row, bang, that was it, gone. Tonsils, yeah. Yeah. I remember missing a game for Liverpool because of it. I mean, thinking back now, I'm thinking, what was I doing? But you make mistakes, you've got to learn from it. And the game I missed, I just scored for Liverpool against Newcastle. And it was our Christmas do. So I went out in town, enjoyed it, got smashed, young kid, obviously. And I thought, right, I want it again the next day. And then tonsillitis. And so I missed the next game, which was West Brom, when we beat them 6-0. I'm thinking, how many goals would they have scored? I was in bed watching the game thinking, gutted, absolutely gutted. But there you go. Should have probably admitted that, but there you go.
No, but like it's different, isn't it? Because you can always look back. Like hindsight's a wonderful thing. You can look back and go, I should have done that differently. But when you're in the moment and you've just had a good day and you're celebrating with the rest of the lads, I suppose it's just one of those things, isn't it? But then obviously we need to get onto the iconic shirt behind you, Mellor 33. What a what a shirt, and what a year it was in terms of for Liverpool and Champions League football, because obviously you came back from the West Ham loan. You're playing for Liverpool. You got 16 games and you got 5 goals that year. And of course, it was the first season of Rafa Benitez after Gerard Houllier left after 6 years. But how did you find like coming back? Obviously, you didn't really want to go to West Ham. If you had the choice, you come back. There's a different manager. Was it completely different when you came back?
Yeah, fresh start. I was made up. I was thinking, right, okay, this manager might fancy me a little bit more. And I remember the pre-season, he did say, he got us all in the room, must have been 24 of us, and he said, every one of you are going to play a part. And it's the first time where I felt part of things, where I thought, right, okay, I'm going to be involved this season. And about a week into pre-season, I broke down with my knees. That was the first time when I experienced the knee troubles, and it's gutted. I was then managing it, injections, draining my knee, steroids, being injected in there, tablets, painkilling tablets, just to train, just to play. And so the moments I had that season, like we'll talk about obviously Arsenal and Olympiakos, the first thing I did when I got to Anfield those days was go straight into the medical room and get a painkilling injection just to get through the games, because I was struggling that much with my knees, but I wasn't going to turn down the chance to play for Liverpool. And unfortunately, that was the cards I was dealt. I just had to get on with it.
Yeah, and I just want to ask you quickly just on that. So you obviously doing all this extra stuff that you don't really want to, and I think I read an interview that you did years ago today, and you were talking about like you didn't want Liverpool fans to think that you were lazy because obviously that you had the problems with the knees and stuff. So how difficult was that though? Because was that like a daily thing where you had to literally just keep going in and like doing that? That's horrific.
Yeah, my knee was getting drained of about 80, 90 mil of fluid. So I couldn't do you know the thigh stretch? Couldn't even do a thigh stretch. So my knee was that full of fluid. And then obviously taking the tablets and the injections just to get through games to numb the pain. But fans don't see that. So even players today, you'll watch the game and you think, why is he not at his best?
Yeah.
And sometimes we never know. You know, we don't know what sort of injuries or niggles players are carrying. But that was something, unfortunately, that followed me about. And I didn't blame people for saying, wow, you look lazy. Why are you not running about as much as you can? Because physically, it was hard, really hard. getting in and out of a car, walking up and down stairs. I was in pain, but I wasn't going to turn down the chance to play. And obviously I had a few moments through that pain barrier.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like, especially as a young lad, like that's like, obviously your livelihood is your legs and your feet and stuff like that, and your joints. You need them to be in tip top, don't you? So that's that must have been difficult, and even like psychologically to try and like think, why is this happening to me at this time? And obviously Liverpool were going through injury problems with the strikers and stuff, which we'll get onto. But I just wanted to ask you a bit more about Rafa then. So we've had like different opinions on like from the people we've had on the show in the past. We've had Momo Sissoko, who said Rafa was like a father figure, but then I think he had him at Valencia, he had him at Liverpool, brought him to Liverpool. So I think they maybe had like more of a connection. And other people like that, it was kind of said like that he's more, I don't know, he's more a bit colder. Was that something that you agree with?
Yeah, he was cold, but he was brilliant coach, absolutely brilliant. I learned a lot from the time I was there with him. I felt as though he rated me, but he was ruthless. So I was injured, so I was no good to him, and he was going to make the best decision for Liverpool and the centre forward position. He was cold in terms of not like Jurgen would give you a big hug today, but he still appreciated what you did. I mean, the tactical side of the game was something that I learned so much every day on the training ground. He was out there, so that was different to Gerard Houllier, and told us where we had to be with and without the ball. And it wasn't the most exciting of training to start with, but I tell you what, he educated us and he got us organised and he got us to understand the game a lot better. One of the other things that he introduced, not just the tactical side of it, for pre-match, I went down for pre-match once, and usually it was like cereals and toast, no butter. Wasn't allowed any butter on my bread. I was like, what's the point in having toast with no butter? So that was another variation in how the diet had changed. No, Rafa was a top coach, and he gave me a lot of chances, so I'll always be grateful for that. And he understood the coldness about having to get rid of me because my injuries had taken its toll too much.
Yeah, and obviously when he signed, he brought in obviously a lot of talented players. We mentioned Xabi Alonso earlier, Luis Garcia, Fernando Morientes, the Rafalution as it was called. But we also saw the likes of Michael Owen leave, Marcus Babel, Danny Murphy, Stefan Honcho. I mean, you've probably answered this, but in terms of even the training, like when you were training, did that feel like a massive switch in terms of what you were used to when you were last at the club?
Yeah, and I can't remember if he kept Samuel Lee and Phil Thompson, because they were massive for Gerard Houllier, and they understood, what the football club was all about as previous players as well. I think with sort of what changed with the dressing room was the Spanish boys integrated more than the French lads did. We had a lot of French lads in the dressing room with Gerard Houllier. We just mentioned a few there. Garcia, Morientes came a little bit after, Alonso, but they just proper embedded themselves as the lads, and I thought we were a lot closer as a dressing room with the Spanish lads coming in. No surprise that obviously we had big success with the Champions League because of that togetherness.
Yeah, and I think like for me when I've looked back on like today and like when I've been putting this together, like you got 2 goals in the 2-0 win over Middlesbrough in the League Cup in the November of that year at Anfield. And like when I was looking at their team, I was like it's like a throwback to to Middlesbrough like back in the day, because they were actually really good. They were a decent side back then. I think they finished 7th, and they were only 3 points behind us in the league. Obviously, we gave up on the league because like Champions League was the priority at that point. But did you obviously scored those 2 goals? Did you see that as like a platform to build on?
Yeah, big moment. First Anfield goals. I think Emlyn Hughes had just passed away, so that was a night where we had a minute's silence for him wearing black armbands. That was very sad, obviously legend of the club. But it was a big night for me to get a couple of goals and late goals as well. I think they were last 10 minutes of the game. Sometimes as a young player thinking I'm going to get dragged off here 60, 70 minutes, but manager kept me on, and obviously buzzing to get those couple of goals. It was a nice moment.
Yeah, and then I think it's only 2 weeks after that we get to the Arsenal goal, which is one of the most iconic goals. And I think it's one of those that whenever I see it on Twitter, I have to retweet it, because it's just one of those moments where, like, I think I was 15 at the time, where it's one of those where coming up against an Arsenal side that are just so good, like they're literally starting 11. I think you're up against like Sol Campbell and Kolo Toure that day. at centre back, which is like
invincible team. They were a top team, weren't they? Top team: Henry, Vieira, Fabregas, Pires, Ljungberg, Ashley Cole. It was like, wow, they were the best team around at that time.
Yeah, so we're going into that game, and obviously Alonso, I think, scores a worldie as well, like a nice little through ball outside the foot by Stevie, and Alonso belts the top left corner, and you're like, perfect. But then Vieira gets the equaliser just on the hour. And then are you like, when it gets to that point, are you worried a little bit because you're thinking it's 1-1? Is he going to maybe take me off like after they've scored, or maybe bring someone else on? Are you worried at that stage?
Do you know when Alonso scored? If you watch it again, I'm the first one on him because I'm thinking I'm in the papers tomorrow celebrating with Alonso for that goal. But yeah, when it gets to 60, 70 minutes, it's the easy option, isn't it, to bring off the young player? So I thought I was more surprised they'd kept me on till the 90th minute. And obviously, I remember big Chrissy Kirkland, route one, rather than playing out from the back, bang, up it goes. Me and Patrick Vieira elbow each other in the face, and Harry Kewell gets cleaned out by a combination of Sol Campbell and Colo, and it was just there to hit. I mean, I didn't score many goals outside the box, but I hit that beautifully, and Lehmann nowhere near it, into the back of the net, and it was a moment that it's nice to look back on and go, I can still feel it now in front of the Kop, just the noise, everyone shouting yes, and it was just an absolute buzz. From a young age, all I wanted to do was score goals, and that was the moment that just felt like, wow, that was the goal that I'd always wanted to score. And being the last minute winning goal against the best team around in front of the Kop, God, love that moment. Yeah, I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, because like players say, and obviously I would have loved to have been a player. We all would have. Anyone that watching or listening would have loved to. But like scoring a goal is the best feeling ever. But to score a stoppage time winner against a world-class Arsenal team, does that elevate it? Does that feel like even more euphoric in the moment as well?
Well, I'm still talking about it now. Yeah,
I know, yeah.
Do you know what's nice?
So.
I'd love to be sat here thinking I've got 400 or 500 games under my belt for Liverpool, won this, won that. I've got a couple of moments that people remember. You're saying you were 15, you remember that goal. It's nice that it was a significant moment that people still remember. And in fact, I remember Alonso saying it that season. Not that it gave us the belief, but it did say we can beat the best team here. And obviously we went on to win the Champions League that year. So it was a case of a confidence booster to say we can compete with the best teams around, even though that was November, and obviously there was still a long part of the season to go.
Yeah, and obviously you just mentioned the Champions League. We have to talk about the Olympiakos game because that was another one. Obviously, watching it, I think I watched it at home actually, just in front of the telly with my dad. But that was only 10 days after the Arsenal game, and you were on the bench that night. Did you feel disappointed by that at all? Did you feel like you should have started that game?
Fuming. Probably been more angry at half time because we were losing 1-0, and I spent the whole half time just staring at Rafa, waiting for him to look at me and say, "You're coming on." But he didn't. He turned around to Cinema upon goal. Good player, but he didn't score goals like I scored goals, and he knew he needed goals, and he brought him on. I'm thinking, what's he doing, bringing him on instead of me? So I was fuming with him. But what a genius, because 2 minutes into the second half, Cinema upon goal score, so he made the right decision. And I spent the whole second half running up and down the touchline, staring at Rafa, watching the game, and eventually he brought me on, scored a goal. Nunes should have scored before I scored at the back post. Goalie saved it, little tap in, and then off I went back to the halfway line. It's funny because obviously Gerard's goal is a goal that we all remember as what a moment, what a goal. And we recreated, me and my kids and the missus, a TikTok with that goal, because there's a TikTok on obviously Gerard, you beauty. And obviously it was great. It was in lockdown. We had all day to do it, which it took us. And then when my lad was back at school and eventually the kids were back, he came back one day and he said, "Dad, you never told me you scored in that game." Because my goal's sort of forgotten about. I was like, yeah, I scored. It was just a tap in. So, yeah, it was nice to have got a goal. But the big moment was Stevie's goal. And I think the commentary helped me. You can see on the screen now that I've got quite a small forehead because my hair seems to be going forward as I get older.
I wish I had that problem.
Yeah.
Mine's going backwards.
despite having the small forehead, still managed to nod it down for Stevie. But grateful to Martin Tyler for that commentary, which was lovely cushioned header, wasn't it? That was it.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, obviously brings on Pongol, and then 3 minutes after you enter the fray for Milan Barros, it's the goal that you just mentioned there, and I think it's a really good goal. It's like an instinctive one. Obviously, Nunes gets up the back stick, isn't it? Keeper saves it, and then you're just in there. But it's the quick reactions, because the defender, like, I watched it again this morning just to remind myself like of that moment, and the defender nearly clears it, but you just get your toe just ahead of him. So can't be understated how big that goal is as well. Obviously, not as beautiful as Stevie's, but still crucial.
Yeah, but we knew we needed another, so it was a case of, right, okay, let's go again, but to the halfway line, and we'll come again. I honestly thought I'd score another. I thought, right, I'm going to get another one here, and it wasn't to be for me, but it was for Stevie. What a moment for him.
Yeah, and I was just like, when I've been looking at the stats and that, like your only assist for Liverpool, I can't think of any other player who's got one assist at a club, apart from maybe Balotelli. Obviously, Balotelli for the Aguero goal.
Yeah.
But I can't think of any other player who's had one assist at a club and it to be so iconic. Like, yeah, amazing.
I don't know if I want to be in that category, or maybe.
No, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a memorable one. But obviously, when the ball came into me from Carragher on the left wing, what was he doing there? I had two options. I could go to Stevie or John Arnorisa, John Arnorisa, lovely left foot. You trust him with his left peg, but I knew if I nodded it down, he was on his right foot, and one in about 700 shots on his right foot were going to hit the target. So I was going to sway towards nodding it down for Stevie. And when he scores, I'm not sure if any of the camera angles actually pick it up. I stupidly stood on the edge of the box, just buzzing that it had gone in. And I thought Stevie would stop and celebrate with me. So I put my hands up and gone, get in there. And he just barged past me, winded me. So by the time I got to celebrate with him in the corner, I was one of the last players there. And yet I should have been closest to him. Because he'd wind me, pushed me out of the way so quickly. It took me ages to get there to celebrate with him in the corner.
And was that, as a player, was that the best atmosphere you've experienced that night? Yeah, it was amazing.
As a player, as a fan, I'd say Chelsea in the semi-final that year I was in the old main stand. That was the loudest and the best atmosphere I've ever experienced. Yeah, I was at Istanbul. Yes, I've been at other finals that we've won, but that semi-final against Chelsea was just something that I've never experienced before, being in the stadium for that. But Olympiakos for me, yes, on the pitch to experience that. But Chelsea in the semi was the best.
Yeah, it was like ears bleeding. It was that loud. Like, it's just like ridiculously loud. But then obviously we're talking about loads of positives. Like, there's some negatives, because obviously you get injured, I think, from the January onwards, and you have to have the surgery and stuff. So you missed all the knockout stages and the final, of course. But obviously I mentioned the Redmen interview earlier, and like the whole story about Fernando Morientes, like, just going down to the fella and saying, "I'm Fernando Morientes," getting out his passport, had to show the fella. He gives him a hug, and then he gets you all onto the pitch, which is like, what a story.
True, because you know, for those fans that were inside the stadium, it was 69,000 fans. Must have been 60,000 Liverpool fans. There was only a small pocket behind the goal of the AC Milan fans, and we were all in our Liverpool trackies, and everyone had the Liverpool colours on. Of course they did, because it's a big cup final, all the Liverpool fans. And so we were sort of where, you know, the players not involved and all the wives were sat. And our only way was to pile down to the bottom of the stand and try and get on the pitch with our mates. My mates, they've just won the Champions League. I want to go and say, well done. But all the fans wanted to get on the pitch as well. So there was obviously loads of stewards. And this Turkish lad was not having it at all. He obviously didn't see the Olympiakos game because he had no idea who I was. The big Chris Kirkland was there. Pellegrino. I always get them mixed up, the ending. Remember him? Big centre half. Signed from Malaga, was it? Went on to manage Southampton. You know what I mean? And Morientes,
wasn't it?
So Morientes has gone, right, I'll speak to him. And he spoke to him, and he was like, no, didn't even believe it was Morientes. So he had to get his passport out to prove it was him. He just sort of said, listen, I've won the Champions League 4 times, in broken English, obviously. And he's onto the pitch. Steward's giving him a big hug. Not sure if the steward had a phone or not for a selfie, but he let Fernando Morientes on. But Morientes could have just scarpered and obviously gone with the team and left us all. He made sure every single one of us got on the pitch. So when Stevie lifted the trophy, we're on the back of the podium and enjoying that moment. It was amazing.
Yeah, and then you get Maldini's medal. Is it Maldini's or Shevchenko's obviously runners-up medal?
Yeah, still waiting for a phone call off one of them. So obviously we've done the trophy lift, the confetti's everywhere, and we come off the podium to go and share the moment with the fans. And it was Did we say it was Pellegrini or Pellegrino?
I think it's Pellegrino. I think Maurizio Pellegrino.
So he's hovering about by the podium where all the medals were, and he just sort of picks a couple up and he goes, "Do you want one?" So I was like, "Yeah, I'll have one." Yeah, thinking it's the winner's medal. But it turned out it was silver, so I put it in my pocket and off we go. Tried to swap it with Traore in the changing room afterwards for a real one. I didn't really, but that was how we got. They just left them behind. Obviously, didn't want to pick them up. So when Maldini wants his runners-up medal from 2005, we'll have to give it him back. It's at my dad's house at the moment, so I'll have to go and get it there.
I say it's inflation and all that, at least in the hundreds of thousands by now, isn't it? Though, so if you want
one of the players had to get his winner's medal insured, and it was insured for 20 grand. That was what it was.
20 grand? Oh wow! I thought it'd be more than that.
Yeah, back then, 2005.
That should be loads more now, though, won't it? To be fair. But yeah, that's like just such a funny, like your dad's got that. Your dad's got either Maldini's or Shevchenko's runners up. Like that's such a just a hilarious story. That's so funny. But then another like negative is that obviously you missed the parade. Obviously, along with Stephen Warnock. I think you got the flight before the players, and then you landed. They landed after you, and then obviously it was the load of Liverpool fans, so you ended up missing it somehow, didn't you?
Yeah, devastated. Yeah, we landed at Liverpool airport first, but the players and the wives were on a separate flight, landed an hour after us, and we were waiting for our bags. Obviously, Liverpool airport was chocker, and someone should have just made the call. Just forget your bags, get back to Mellor. So the first team were obviously there because we were waiting for about 2 hours for our bags, and the buses were ready to go. Don't know who made the call. Rafa, Stevie, they were desperate for us to all be there. Police were saying, "Listen, we've got 1 million people on the street, so you need to get going. We can't be waiting any longer." And so when we got back to Melwood, the buses had gone, and devastated. I drove home and I watched it on TV, and I was crying. I was devastated because I wanted to be there to share that moment. I had family, I had friends on the route wanting to be there and sort of wave at me on the bus. So yeah, never got to experience that, but obviously it was great scenes to see all the fans turn out for the players the way they did.
Yeah, I mean that's like you deserve that moment as well, just obviously from being a part of getting us there, the whole like Olympiakos stuff, and so you more than deserve that. So that's just the like obviously circumstances and stuff. That's just not good, but yeah, I mean you more than deserved to be there, more than deserved it. But what let's
move on. Let's move on.
But yeah, so then obviously you moved on from the Reds and you spent like 5 or so years at Preston in the Championship, and you retired 6 months or so shy of your 30th birthday in 2012. How was that? Like obviously we were talking before about like the whole tendonitis thing in your legs and stuff, and did that feel like it was just the right move because of all the problems you had, or because like you're still 29? It's obviously very conflicting in your mind, isn't it?
Yeah. I had my 30th in town in the Malmaison. It was a good party. But yeah, it was medical advice. The surgeon was like, "No chance. You can't carry on with those knees." I knew after surgery, about the 3rd or 4th surgery with my knees, the surgeon said, "You can't play at top level football with your condition." So I dropped down to the Championship, like you say, managed it, coped with it. I would love to have experienced more again, but I had to manage my body all the way through my career. It was a frustration. Could never play a game without taking a painkilling tablet. That was the way it was for me, unfortunately. And then it got to a point where the damage was too big. And because of one incident away at MK Dons, I was playing for Preston, twisted in the ground. There was no one near me. And my knee just sort of cracked away, and that was it, game over.
Wow, and I think that's like one of those, like when you're 29, you still feel like you can do a job for at least another like 4 or 5 years. So that's like one of those where obviously you're getting the medical advice, but yeah, it's just one of those things, I suppose, isn't it? But then obviously you moved on to doing the LFC TV stuff and going to watch the youth team and stuff. How was that transition? How was that for you to be on the other side of the field?
Yeah, nothing will ever replace the buzz of being stood there in front of the Kop, knowing you've scored the winning goal. I mean, that is the ultimate high that everybody wants as a professional football player. I got to experience that. I'm sort of in the mindset of not looking back at, you know, what more could he have done. It's sort of, I've got to think about what I can do. And so, yeah, I love the media work. Absolutely love it. I talk about with the under 18s, the academy side, 21s now, previously 23s. Absolutely love it because I know the pathway they're on. I've been there. I know how difficult it is. I know how close they are, how much they want it. And I've enjoyed seeing some very talented players come through our youth system, and there will be even more. We've obviously got a first-team manager at the moment, which is beneficial for academy players. That will give them that opportunity, will have that pathway. But I know how blocked it can be. You know, my time under Stevie Highway and Gerard Houllier didn't get on. So we, to get down to Mellor was very difficult. You know, I needed 56 goals to get down to Mellor. It was difficult. Whereas lads now, the connection is a lot better, which will help these younger players. And nothing better is than seeing a young player coming through, progressed into the first team. Trent, we've seen it with Trent, absolutely magnificent. Other players, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott as well. I know he was only there briefly compared to a couple of the other ones, but it's great to see that pathway is there for us.
Yeah, and shout out to Mike Reid, Opta's Mike Reid, because I do chat to Mike now and again.
Every stat he's got it in his locker is brilliant.
Honestly, he must be sick of me because I just DM him going, Mike, can you tell me the stats from like 2002 to 2006, please? And he comes back instantly with it, like all packaged nicely. What a guy. But before we go, Neil, I just wanted to ask you about like Jurgen Klopp, obviously, because he's been here since 2015. And what have you made of like the journey that we've been on for the last 7 years?
One of our great managers. He has reconnected the football club with everybody. I think everybody feels part of it. The supporters, there's a connection with the players. He's brought success. He's brought good times. He's brought trophies. And when he arrived, it was sort of thinking, oh, I'd love us to be able to compete. We are now one of the best teams in world football. And I believe that is down to Jurgen Klopp. He has been unbelievable, not just for the football club, for the city as well. I talked about the connection, about connecting with the club for me when I was a young player. Jurgen has connected with the fans, the city, and that's why he has stayed so long. Absolutely loved what he has brought to this football club. Before he came, we used to lose our best players. Under Jurgen, we don't lose our best players anymore, and we can beat any side in world football. So that is what Jurgen has brought. Success, happy times, great memories, and I've loved his time at Liverpool.
Yeah, because like you said, like when we had like the likes of Torres and Suarez, Alonso, Mascherano, they've always been great players, but there's always been that like getting circled by the Spanish clubs, obviously, especially when there's like South American players as well. They always get picked off, but I've never really felt that under Klopp, and I think that's them like you said, the most secure we've ever been, which is lovely in itself. But yeah, but Neil, I think we can leave it there. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on. I think I said it would be half an hour, but we're getting on to 50 minutes here. So apologies if we've gone over a little bit.
Looking too long. Sorry about that.
No. I would have kept you longer, but yeah, it would have been here all night otherwise. But really appreciate you jumping on. And been really enjoyable. But if you're watching on YouTube, do like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or any audio podcasts, do leave us a rating and a review if you're feeling extra generous, because it really helps the show get better and bigger. But yeah, thanks again to Neil, and thanks everyone for watching or listening, and we'll see you next time.